Mr. President, as the American people can clearly see, President Trump's new tariffs have become a massive tax hike on consumers. A tax on the food we eat, a tax on the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, every cup of coffee we have in the morning. These rising costs are not just hurting consumers, actually. They're hurting American businesses and our workforce, too. We're already seeing the impact. It's not a hypothetical. I call your attention to my home state, the great state of California, home to two of the largest ports in the nation in Southern California alone, the neighboring ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, that truly power our nation's economy. It's not exaggeration. The port of Los Angeles, which is the largest port in the United States, expects imports to drop 35% in just 2 weeks' time as Trump's tariffs and his manufactured chaos bring global trade to a halt. The port of Long Beach is expecting similar declines. Take a minute to think about the magnitude of that drop in cargo volume. That decline at the end of the day will mean empty shelves and higher prices. The over $300 billion in cargo coming through what we know as the San Pedro Bay Port Complex is tied to nearly 1 million jobs in the region alone and 2.7 million jobs across the country. That's nearly one job for every 4 containers. When the richest president in history decides on his own, unlawfully, to haphazardly apply an across-the-board tax on goods, because that's what these tariffs are, the goods movement industry is going to take a hit. It'll mean fewer jobs for port workers, for truckers, and for communities across the country. It will mean more Americans out of work. And while the Western port communities may be the first to feel the pain, it won't be long before the effects of these tariffs reach the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. And as I mentioned, this isn't just bad news for American consumers who rely on imports. It's also bad news for U.S. farmers and businesses that rely on the export of goods to other countries. Trump's tariffs are already damaging important supply chains in ways that will be difficult and very expensive to reverse. And in the meantime, China and others are all too happy to fill in the void. Just had a group of growers from California in my office just yesterday. And they're sharing with me their very specific experience, fears that are playing out. You see, United States companies, not just agricultural companies, depend on markets in China, elsewhere in Asia, India, Europe, for sales, for profits that they can in turn invest in their own companies and in hiring more employees. Now, when those markets are shut off to them, in those countries' responses to these unnecessary tariff wars provoked by President Trump, they don't stop consuming, whether it's fruit, vegetables, electronics, or otherwise. They just find somewhere else to get it. And when those other countries, those other markets find a replacement for their supply, they're not going to give it up in 2 months, maybe, if Donald Trump wakes up in a better mood and sees the error of his ways when it comes to these tariffs, because there's that deadline, right? We're in a 90-day postponement of a lot of these tariffs, but we don't know what's coming on day 91. Tariffs are imposed, tariffs are not imposed, more significant tariffs imposed. Hope it has nothing to do with his poll numbers, because the American public will continue to feel more pain. My point is, other markets, consumers abroad who have purchased from the United States are going to purchase elsewhere, and they're not going to revert immediately back, even if we get a president to make the right decision in the next couple of months. Now, like I said, Americans are already feeling the pain. It's going to get worse. Just this morning, the Commerce Department reported our nation's gross domestic product for the first quarter. The results? Our quarterly GDP declined by 0.3%. It wasn't a reduction in growth, it was a decline of 0.3% in his first 100 days alone. Donald Trump's reckless policies actually shrank the American economy. Is that what he bragged about? Is that what he campaigned on? Is that what people voted for? This shrinking of the economy, by the way, follows 3 years of robust growth of our economy. Under President Biden, I don't think our Republican colleagues will recognize that, but it's true. The numbers do not lie. 100 days of chaos, increased costs, and corruption is shrinking our economy. To my Republican colleagues, are you hearing this? Are you listening? Are you prepared to act? American businesses were going to be forced to take on some of these higher costs for materials, to cut back on production, to try to make ends meet, to delay investment. That's the opposite of what we need. We need more investment, not to delay or postpone investments because of this tariff uncertainty. And certainly, they're going to raise prices because, again, when American companies have to import, it's American companies that pay the tariffs, not other countries, as the president would like you to believe. And those costs get passed on to the consumer. And meanwhile, the world is moving on without us, as I explained a minute ago. So let's be clear about the stakes of what we're debating today. A vote against this resolution is a vote to maintain Trump's tariffs that are so clearly devastating our economy already. And it'll move us closer to a recession solely of Trump's doing. Can't blame it on anybody else. And it's a vote against the American worker, a vote against the American economy, a vote against American competitiveness. Is that what you want to go back and tell your constituents? Colleagues, I urge you to listen to your constituents, to small businesses in our respective states, to state and local governments. It's not too late to turn back. Support this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.